A wave of emotion. Are you going to tell people what we're doing?
Okay.
What chapter 15?
We're on chapter 15, A Wave of Emotion.
A wave of emotion, a mixture of anger and longings washed over Mac, and as if on cue his father's colors burst from across the meadow and enveloped him. He was lost in a wash of ruby and vermilion, magenta and violet, as the light and color whirled around and embraced him. And somehow, in the middle of the exploding storm, he found himself running across the meadow to find his father, running toward the source of the colors and emotions. He was a little boy wanting his daddy, and for the first time he was not afraid. He was running, not caring for anything but the object of his heart, and he found him. His father was on his knees, awash in light, tears sparkling like a waterfall of diamonds and jewels into the hands that covered his face. "Daddy!" yelled Mac, and he threw himself unto the man who could not even look at his son. In the howl of wind and flame, Mac took his father's face into his two hands, forcing his dad to look him in the face, so he could stammer words he had always wanted to say. "Daddy, I am so sorry. Daddy, I love you." The light of his words seemed to blast darkness out of his father's colors, turning them blood red. They exchanged sobbing words of confession and forgiveness as a love greater than either one healed them. Finally, they were able to stand together, a father holding his son as he had never been able to do before. It was then that Mac noticed the swell of the song that washed over them, both as it penetrated the holy place where he stood with his father. With arms around each other, they listened, unable to speak through the tears, to the song of reconciliation that lit the night sky. An arching fountain of brilliant colors began among the children, especially those who had suffered the greatest, and then rippled as it passed from one to the next by the wind until the entire field was flooded with light and song. Mac somehow knew that this was not a time for conversation, and that his time with his father was quickly passing. He sensed that by some mystery this was much for his dad as it was for him. As for Mac, the new lightness he felt was euphoric. Kissing his father on the lips, he turned and made his way back to the small hill where Sarah stood waiting for him. As he passed through the ranks of children, he could feel their touches and colors quickly embrace him and fall away. Somehow he was already known and loved here.
Another part that touched my heart. I feel like in chapter 15, this encounter with his father in the spirit, my interpretation is this is what it took for him to forgive. I believe, like the Bible says, that when we pass away on this earth, we can't encounter our past father or mother. I firmly believe that. However, I do believe in God's love. In a dream, this is probably what happened in Mac's life in order for him to forgive his father in spirit. And that's what it took for him to have this, just in this statement, it tells it all right here. It was a relief, because it says, as for Mac, the new lightness he felt was euphoric. That is, he felt light. He felt, I'm sure we all could understand that someone that we had to forgive, and receiving that forgiveness, it helps you in your everyday life, knowing that you were able to forgive, that person has forgiven you, especially someone like Mac, his father having abused him verbally. All he knew was abuse from his father, and for him to come back to him and say, "I forgive you," instead of even allowing his father to say, "Oh, I know I done you wrong," Mac was ready to say, and that's just because of God's love. I feel like Mac felt like we do at some point. I know for me, I'll say church. It's something about a service or I won't even say church. It's something about getting into prayer, into your relationship with God. Once you come out of that prayer, you're ready to forgive, you're ready to go forward. You don't want anything in your way hindering your relationship with God. And I felt like this is what Mac done. He wanted to go forward, so he forgave his father. And now he has that light feeling that I think we all can glean from, because I'm sure we've all experienced that.
Yeah.
Which was hard, I'm sure. Because I don't know, this thing really, I can't explain what it does. Because I think for a father, I've forgiven a lot of people. I've even forgiven my father for things. However, for a father, to forgive a father, that's powerful.
That is. Absolutely.
Because they're the head. They're the closest, we think, to God. So to actually really forgive, I'm sure, I feel just as free as he felt.
Now, I'll say something as far as on that. And also, just going back to the way, it's the little foxes, as my sister would say, you know, the tricks of the enemy. And like you said, it's power in those heads agreeing and finding forgiveness. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, I mean, in order for things to go forth, in the real world, you know, it's going to take forgiveness. It's going, you know, maybe your father never will come to you and say, you know, I'm sorry for not being there for you, because it's just so how disconnected the world has gotten with one another. But in order for you as an individual to move on with your life, you're going to have to find forgiveness for him, even if he never comes to you with the forgiveness, to empower yourself to go on with your family, to allow your sons to know that forgiveness is number one, is the fruit of the Spirit that brings you closer to your fellow man, which was the second law of God. You know, these things are important.
Forgiveness releases you. Takes you out of the bondage that you walk in, and releases you into living life free, more abundant,
At
peace. People are looking for peace today. And when you forgive and give that away and let it go, you'll find that peace.
Absolutely.
But you're also helping the other person, not you as being the victim. You're also helping the accuser by forgiving him, because you make way of God being able to handle him, to be able to deal with him and his sins and stuff.
And you free yourself.
And you free yourself, but you're also freeing up him to be free.
Absolutely.
And to be forgiven.
And to be forgiven,
absolutely.
so he can have the same freedom that you're experiencing by God.
Yes.
Go ahead. I think something else that is important to point out here is that something that I forgot to mention when we started that was that Mac was able to see this because of one thing, you know, where God comes to him and he says, you know, I would love for you to see a bit of what I see. And so before we can even begin to forgive anybody, before we can even begin to extend love or do any of that, we won't be able to do it until we can see what God sees. And see how God sees. See through his eyes. So I think what was important to note is that God offered him the invitation, let me show you what I see. You know, and when he was able to see what God sees, because when God looks at us, he sees us through love. He's able to,
he sees us through the blood.
Us, you know, he loves us. He's long-suffering with us. He's patient with us. So when he was able to bring Mac up to a level to see what he sees through his eyes, Mac was able to see through his father, because he was seeing through the eyes of God. He was seeing how God sees.
You brought up two good points, and that was bringing up to a level. And that's something we should set standards for ourselves. Come up to this level. That's right. Come up higher. What's wrong with forgiving? What's wrong with apologizing? What's wrong with saying I'm sorry? You just brought yourself up a level. You know, and that's right. Absolutely.
That's maturity.
That's right. Absolutely. And then another point that I'm sorry, I forgot my second point, and it'll come back to me. Go ahead.
Okay. But it's good. If we had all night, I would say in chapter 15, because the power of forgiveness.
goodness.
It's very, it's
We're gonna go ahead
pivotal
and
in
close
Matt's
this
life.
one out.
Yes.
Thank you.